Hello, everybody. You're all doing fantastically well. It's Connor here, and we are back with another One Leeds video. Can you believe it? We're back here again. It feels like we're never leaving at the minute. And listen, I wanted to discuss something this morning, which is almost giving Michael Skubala a little bit of leeway and almost try to be a little bit more positive about his appointment, because it's not about Skubala, this whole debacle. This whole debacle is about how the club has been ran when it's come to this managerial search. So before we get into the thick of it, everyone, if you would do me an absolute solid, let me just do this and just like the video. That would be fantastic, and we'll get into the thick of it straight away. Let me just get into a few of your comments. Richard says, "Orta the problem if we go down." Connor clearly slept on it like the rest of us and convinced himself, like me, that it could work. I think I might be delusional at this point in mind. Yeah, I think the thing is, Ed, it's maybe not the fact that I was upset about everything that was going on with Scoobs, because I'd said that I'd seen improvement. I'd said that I'd felt a little bit more optimistic. The problem from my end was just the managerial search and the absolute dump of a managerial search it was. However, when you do take a step back and look at it, I'd have been way more confident if they'd have not got it right with Areola, if they'd have not got it right with Giardo and Slot, and then just gone bang, right, we're going to Skubala, and just been more confident in that decision. Then I'd have been more confident as well. But it feels like he's the last resort, and that's not what that I don't like that for Skubala, and I don't like that for Leeds. So anyway, what I want to do, everybody, is give you a few things to think about, and I've gone away and done a little bit of research, and I want to bring to you guys a few key points at the end of the video, but I also want to discuss why this could work for Leeds United, bringing in Michael Skubala. So let's get into it. Just before we begin, Leeds United Ultras, hi mate. Do you think we'll get a new coach before the end of the season? I don't, buddy. I don't. I think this is going to be it with Skubala, and I don't think they should be panicking anyway in terms of just throwing the job around here, there, and everywhere. I think if they've not got a specific target and they've not got a gettable target, there's absolutely no point in just throwing the Leeds United job here, there, and everywhere. And what's going to happen is someone going to come in with 10 games to go, 8 games to go. It's ridiculous. The planning's ridiculous. So for me now, they've made the bed. They've got to lie in it. It's Skubala's job, and I hope they do. And it's just disappointing that they've not put on the statement that he's got the job for the rest of the season, because once again, it's an indictment on Skubala that they don't maybe think he's good enough, and maybe they're giving him a few more games to see what happens. But unfortunately, you've got to make a decision now. You have to make a decision. Leeds United are in a position where you can't just be really mucking around with the decision of the head coach. But let's get into it anyway. Okay, so the one reason why I think Skubala could work as Leeds United manager is, my first point is, he's an unknown quantity, which I think worked with Mike Jackson at Burnley for large periods last season. Obviously, he was the Burnley manager. I believe he got 4 wins in 7, an incredible record towards the back end of the season. And I think it was a lot of the time because people didn't really know who he was, and I think he was coming up against coaches and they thought maybe he was going to do the Dyche way of playing, but he evidently mixed it up a little bit. There was more of a press from Mike Jackson. It wasn't as direct as they were under Sean Dyche as well, and the players seemed to really take to him. So that's probably a good example of how this could work. And as I've said at the start, everyone, if Jackson had more games towards the back end of the season, he'd have kept Burnley up, quite simply, on the record. I mean, they were going into the last 5 games of the season, and they were in almost, I think it was the top 12 in terms of form. So they turned it around completely, and he just ran out of games. Burnley made the decision too late. So what we know is Skubala is he's been a coach for 20 years. He impressed heavily during interview. He beat Eric Bakker, obviously formerly of Leeds United, and Graham Murty to his current job. And for me, he evidently, and we're going to touch on this a little bit later on when we come to my third point, but he did make changes, and there were subtle changes for the Man United games. There were tweaks, but there was still changes. And being an unknown quantity, opposition managers, as we saw with Eric Ten Hag over 2 fixtures, one of the best coaches in the world, struggled to really get a grasp of what Skubala's Leeds were all about. And I think they really, in the first half, especially at the weekend, I think Leeds United should have been 1 or 2 up. At Old Trafford, we were 1 or 2 up, and I think tactically we were better in the home fixture. I think you could evidently see what Skubala was trying to do. So this is a massive beneficiary to Leeds. It's a huge beneficiary because Dyche, the managers that we're going to come up against, who are in and around us, who have a very same quality standard as we have, are not going to be able to win the game with just raw quality like we saw Manchester United do. They're going to have to tactically figure out how to beat Skubala, and with him being an unknown quantity, that is going to work into Leeds' advantage for me. And as we saw in the Manchester United game, I think Manchester United really struggled to mitigate against this new Leeds United way of playing, because it was, and we're going to get into exactly why it was different, but it was very, very different to Marsh ball, even though Skubala came out respectfully so and said that we'd only made tweaks, but there were subtle and for me, substantial differences. So I think the key thing I took from his press conference is, prior to the Man United game, was let's have a good, strong, solid structure, and we did. We really did to large points of those two games. So yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. It's the fact that he is an unknown quantity, and that's one of the reasons I'm reasonably positive about just Skubala. Morning, always fun watching Leeds. Hope we stay up. Good luck to standing manager. Yeah, definitely. Leeds says, just mate, let's hope Scoobs doesn't make poor subs again. I think you'll have learned from that, Leeds. I will also say, mate, that the big difference was, Lisandro Martinez coming on for Manchester United, and I think even if Bamford and Harrison would have stayed on the pitch, I think what it enabled Manchester United to do was almost go to a back three. And as you saw with Lisandro Martinez, his passing efficiency was very, very good. He almost gave him that leadership when he came off the bench within 70, 75 minutes. And I think he made a huge difference. So I think maybe we'd have still lost the game. It's difficult to really distinguish with Bamford and Harrison on the pitch because they were evidently tiring. However, I do agree that the structure maybe would have looked a lot better. Ed says again, I think the most positive thing that I can say is we look brilliant at Old Trafford, and he wasn't totally found out in the return fixture. We managed to put in another shift. Ed, I actually thought tactically, mate, we were better. I thought we were better at Ellen Road. It's just that unfortunately the structure didn't uphold against a Manchester United team. Led Zepp 331. So you're for Skubala again, Connor? You've changed your tune? No, I haven't. And I'm not. And once again, please listen. That's what I try and make videos, and I try and encourage the viewer to listen to what I'm saying. I wasn't against Skubala yesterday. The whole premise of the two videos yesterday, if you've missed them, everybody please go check them out. It was the embarrassment of the board search and what they've done, and the PR nightmare that Radrizzani's had over the past couple of days, and the fact that they've just given Skubala the job because they can't find anybody else. That's the problem we've got now. It's not Skubala's. We literally made this point several times in the video and people just don't listen. They curate their own narrative from a video. I was never against Skubala. Please watch and listen to what I'm saying in the videos. Skubala, I'm okay with, hence why I'm doing this video this morning. I'm more worried about his experience maybe going into these games, which I think he can't affect. But I've been very impressed with what he's done against Man United, as I've said several times in many videos previously, even before the two videos we did yesterday. So please listen. We're going to beat evidence as Frank School. Yeah, 100%. We don't want Schroeder, and if he was the end choice, we would have been gladly. Yeah, sack the board. I think that's going to happen at the end of the season, hopefully, Finn. But let's get into the second reason. I think maybe this could work with Skubala. So a calm head in a stressful situation. This is number two. I don't ever feel Marsh was a calm head. He'd always speak about being a calm head. He'd always speak about reducing the stress. But then you'd hear the stress in his voice in press conferences. You'd hear them in post-match interviews where evidently there was a point where Radrizzani and Orta told him to shut up, especially when it came to the transfer window. And I believe the press conferences that we've had with Skubala have been very calm. They've been measured. He's not been given a lot away. And I know we've only had one or two, but I feel that this very, very simple message, this very simple tactical tweak, which reverts Leeds back to maybe what they were doing previously in terms of width, and maybe we didn't really keep a defensive structure under Bielsa, but maybe that more they'll have been more used to working under managers previously who worked with a defensive structure. Going back to the basic principles of football is, for me, simplifying the message. Funneling the ball centrally, consistently, and not wanting to work out wide is an overcomplicated message that the players never really got on board with. and I think this is a big thing that Skubala is going to bring in off the pitch and on the pitch, simplifying tactics, but also being a really calm head. And I think we've learned that from a lot of the press conferences. I think even in the Man United game, in both games where the stress should have been high, it should have been high. It's a massive game for Leeds fans. We need points. Marsh, I don't think any of us expected to be sacked at that point because of Victor Orta's love in with him. Got rid of very impromptu, and we were all pretty surprised. I think so. Skubala came in, calmed the heads down, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. The lads could be completely confident and completely ready with Skubala's message, and I'm hoping that his intelligent and subtle delivery will be as I said, a massive beneficiary in the changing room. So that's my number 2 one, everybody. It's a calm head in stressful situations, which for me, it's on fire at the minute when it comes to the board. They're disagreeing with each other about everything. Evidently, they're responding to fans online. Victor Orta's probably thrown his dummy out the pram that Marsh was sacked and Schruber wasn't hired. Schrouder, I should say, wasn't hired. I think it feels like at the minute that Skubala is almost already keeping that house together, and hopefully the players are on board with that. We've also got to bear in mind, I'm going to wire this in with point 2 as well. We do have a better team, We do have a better team than what we had, so that is a big advantage for Leeds United as well. If the message is a little bit more simplified, it's calmer, and we're playing with a little bit more width, maybe you're going to get the best out of certain individuals who I'll get onto in a little bit. Alan says we all need to get behind Skubala and the players. Our fans are fantastic and can get them over the line. DB6 isn't as complimentary, which is fair enough. Let me just get into it. Actung Dave says, do you think they have had a yes from one of the managers we looked at? But I do, Dave. I do, yeah. And I thoroughly believe that. And I think that's the Areola thing, isn't it? The problem is, Dave, it's actually getting to the end of the season in the Premier League, mate, because unfortunately, you're not going to get Areola coming to Leeds United in the Championship if that was to be the scenario. I know we don't like talking about that, but that is it's a very realistic scenario, I should say, at the minute. So, let's have a look at Baseline Bible. Thanks so much, mate. This is what I like about you, mate, trying to take a positive out of a bad situation. Brett, appreciate that, mate. I'm not, I think I sometimes get this rap of being negative. I'm really not. I just try to look at things realistically. And that's not to be patronising, it's really not. But I try to take a step back and be objective. Hence why I get told I don't support Leeds and I'm another fan of another club multiple times, because I don't just sit here going, Leeds, consistently. I try to take an objective view of things and listen, I'm just a fan. I'm not a pundit. That's all I am. So let's get into the final point, guys. So this is 3 reasons why I think we should be positive about Skubala. But I want to talk about this tactically. I know there's been a lot of people who have looked at it so far and said, Skubala's even came out and said, I only made tweaks to the Marsh system. I disagree with that. And I disagree with that more on the second leg against Man United. But I think the first leg was probably a little bit chaotic in terms of probably quite similar to Marsh. However, in the second game, I think we saw massive differences for me. Skubala implemented a 4-5-1 and we transitioned at points into a 5-4-1, low to mid block. The individual was pressing, which was pretty much Jack Harrison. Every single time when Harry Maguire had the ball, a couple of times he nearly caught him out. And the reason Jack Harrison was the one who pressed primarily was because Leeds were able to then keep the defensive structure in the midfield. So the unit was able to keep its structure. Jack would leave, we'd still have cover there. Now that was for me, the brain dead approach of the Marsh ball press. It was unit pressing where 4-5 players would move out of position, and then if you were to bypass that press, it would be a 1v1 scenario in every area of the pitch, and that was problematic against some of the best midfielders, wingers in the world. We didn't see that. We saw more of a solid structure, as Skubala said in his press conference. As I say, 4-5-1, 5-4-1, mid to low block with no unit pressing. That is not Marsh ball, and it never was Marsh ball. So that is a key tactical change. I think the difference already was evident. the fullbacks had to defend different spaces. They weren't defending such massive spaces because the midfield weren't just going forward and creating chaos as Marsh consistently wanted, and a frantic nature and leaving mass spaces and 1v1 scenarios. Hence probably why you saw better performances, and you've seen better performances from Luke Ayling in his last two. You saw Junior Firpo very, very efficiently play that left-back role. I thought yesterday one of the best performances we've seen from Firpo in a long time, and they didn't look stretched. They didn't look out of breath. They did until they got to the 75th minute when I think Leeds were trying to push for a winner. You really saw Leeds with a very decent structure, I thought, throughout the game. And all you need to do is really look at the first 65 minutes. Bruno Fernandes got through with a mistake from Verber. They had a couple of strikes from outside the area. But really, Leeds were the ones causing problems. They, for me, didn't. The reason I was nervous throughout the game is because it's Man United. I hate them, but and we needed to win the game. But really, from a structural standpoint, I wasn't nervous. I thought Leeds were holding their own very, very nicely. Now, listen, as we all know, if that would have been a Marsh game and it would have been Marsh's tactics implemented, Man United, as Bournemouth, as Fulham, as many teams have come to, as Everton, as many teams have come to Ellen Road and proven, would have probably had 5-6 chances within that first half period, because the structure wouldn't have been there, and we would have kept to those Red Bull principles, which is dive forward, unit press, leave spaces in behind, and just try win the ball high up the pitch. So yeah, that's what I think when it comes to tactically. Another thing as well. I think the only time really Leeds started to look exposed was obviously beyond the 75th minute when Man United made changes, Leeds made changes. But I also thought prior to Rashford's goal, we were trying to push. I thought that. And that was something I'd said to my old man watching the game. I said, he's trying to win this. And I love that. I love the fact he was trying to win the game. Maybe he lost sight of it a little bit because the Leeds players looked a little bit tired. Maybe at that point, when it gets to the 75th, 80th minute, you try and just draw the game. You try and get a point. But I thought Leeds were pushing a little bit more to win the game, which I think in the position that we're in at the minute, we've not won a game since Bournemouth. Can I just also illustrate that no other club in the Premier League has not won a game from that point, which, you know, when Victor Orta's going like that after the Bournemouth game and shushing the Ellen Road crowd, it just makes it more comical / painful, doesn't it? So, yeah, I think overall this tactical imprint is going to help. Now, another thing I wanted to touch on is the width. And I think the classic example of this during the game was when the ball was switched out to Luke Ayling. And what did Luke Ayling then do? And you'll all have noted this because it's so different to what we've been doing. Ayling got it on his right peg and switched the ball to Willy Gnonto, who was on the other side, on the left-hand side. And then Willy Gnonto had a direct run. I believe it was Diogo Dalot at that point. That is something, excuse me, we've not utilised at all this season. You'd never see the switch ball. You saw the switch ball when it came to the back end of last season when, for me, there was no real tactics. It was just give the ball to Rafinha and let's hope. And the Leeds players were almost doing it by themselves on the pitch. That's how I felt towards the back end of last season. But this season, you've seen no width whatsoever. You want the ball is to be funneled, and how do you go against that as a manager? Well, what Erik ten Hag would have done as a manager, going up against the Jesse Marsh structure, would have put 1 or 2 extra bodies in the midfield or that narrow space, and you overload Leeds, and then you hurt Leeds out wide. Exposed. That wasn't the case. So yeah, I thought the width going forward was very good. The amount of times Somerville and Gnonto had 1v1 situations I thought was excellent. And as well, everyone, I thought defensively we were more balanced. I thought you saw a more confident performance over the 2 games from Luke Ayling. I thought Junior Firpo looked very good. And you know, you've really got to give kudos for Skubala for moving away from that narrow structure and implementing a much more wide structure and a more balanced structure within a matter of days. And the players taking to it. Another thing, we're not counter-pressing all the time, which I think is what was moving Leeds United out of position consistently. We're able to hold the position and the defence is able to work as a unit, a proper unit. And hopefully we're going to start seeing more confident performances and more assured performances than from the weaker players under the Marsh system. Let's have a look. Shane says, Connor, great view in the 2 games against Man United were the best this season. We pushed Man United to the limit. Marsh would have never been in the game, mate. It was refreshing. Yeah, and I think, to be honest, Shane, a lot of the rebuttal to that would be, well, Jesse Marsh used to do really well against the bigger teams, and he did. He did used to do, you know, we should have beaten Arsenal at home. We beat Chelsea. We beat Liverpool. I mean, but I guess the anomaly is there is Manchester City, where City really should have scored 10 against Leeds at Ellen Road that night. However, I think in a lot of those games, Leeds were quite lucky to get away with some of the bad chances that these teams were missing, but you can't take it away from Marsh. Leeds were better in these games. However, to say there's not been tactical flexibility from Marsh to Skubala in such a short amount of time is just clearly wrong. It is wrong from a tactical perspective. So that's something we need to take a positive outlook for as well from my perspective. Sujal says Everton and Southampton must win, no ifs, no buts. Siege mentality, we are Leeds, yeah, 100%. Good performance, no good. Now we need results. You're right, 100%. And I guess the good thing about Skubala is he's already got a result. And we were 10 minutes away from getting a result. And I know that's been the whole Marsh thing, hasn't it? We've been so close to results. But Skubala already, against the informed team in Europe, at their patch, where they've won 13 games on the bounce. Let me just repeat that. They've won 13 games on the bounce. Has got a point. And I think both of us, me and you, all of us, understood that going to Old Trafford was probably going to be a battering on both sides. I mean, I was predicting us getting a good hiding, at Old Trafford and at home. So I know it wasn't ideal, but when you contextualise how far we took them in both games, how much they struggled in both games, by the way, which Ten Hag admitted afterwards, that's a huge positive for Leeds at the minute. Things that we need to watch out for. I've just got a couple of notes here. Is management against the lower sides? That's going to be something to hone in on. The reason being is because it's doing it against Manchester United is where the players are all going to be massively up for it. It's a derby, it's a rivalry, I should say. And managing against a side like that where they can have all the ball, and we can just counter attack is very, very different to Everton and Southampton. Or is it? You can let Everton have the ball, as we've spoken about before. Let Cody have the ball. Let Tarkowski have the ball. Implement the exact same strategy with Jack Harrison in that midfield. Close them down, but keep your structure. And I tell you what, everybody, if we have a solid structure against Everton away, I will feel much better than what I did with Marcelo Bielsa at Everton. I know against Everton, against these sides away, I know he had a decent result in his first season against Everton. Obviously, shocking result in his second. But you want to go there with the structure. You want Everton to be frustrated, and I think letting them have the ball would be a really good way of doing things for Leeds United, because then you can hurt them, because they're not going to be great on the ball, are they? And do what we did against Man United. Let them have the ball, press them in certain situations, and play with a little bit more width. We're literally going into a game where Willie Gnonto is going to be up against Seamus Coleman. So yeah, it was excellent to give Man United a bloody nose, but we'll have to wait and see how we do against the other sides. Another thing is Ilan Meslier at the minute. Maybe keep an eye on him. I was looking at a couple of graphs earlier on which have illustrated when it comes to data that his performances have lowered a little bit. So obviously we're going to need Ilan to be on top of his game coming into the last 15 performances of the season. I have worried maybe a little bit about the goals that have gone in against Leeds over the last sort of 5 to 6 weeks, but obviously you look at the save from Bruno the other night. You look at the save from Varane at Old Trafford, the header. He pulls out some fantastic saves. Obviously he does, but there's a few now. I've looked at obviously the Scamacca goal, the Buendia goal. Obviously West Ham, Aston Villa, Sancho at Old Trafford. For me, he's got to be saving that, and the Garnacho one at Ellen Road as well. It's near post, so there's a few that is going in at the minute, and I have thought to myself, and believe it or not, it is backed up by data that Elan's maybe letting a few in at the minute where he should really be saving those chances. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on at the minute. Verba, another point, he's almost like a manager on the pitch, and with a new manager coming in, maybe he'll give the reins to Verba and say, look, this is what I need from you. I need you to be me on the pitch. As I've just said, the manager of the pitch. And I think it's going to be interesting because obviously his leadership is immense. He was telling people what to do the other night. And I think in games against Everton and games against Southampton, he's going to be key. And the return of the boys as well. We've still got Sinistera, Strauch, Rocker to come back. I think someone like Rocker is going to be key. We're playing with width. We're playing with width at the minute. and someone like Rocker, I think in this system is going to be very, very exciting to see. I do think for me, you do break up that midfield of Adams and McKennie to slot someone like Rocker in. Then what do? Do you move to a 4-3-3? That's for Skubala to work out. Yeah, let's hope that can come to fruition. Melee saved us from a good drubbing back. He did, but we do have to look at those goals that I've mentioned. If I'm throwing in the Tottenham goals as well, there's at least two, maybe even three there where he could have done a lot better. If you do look at the succession of the last maybe 7-8 games, yes, he has saved us in I'd say the Brentford game as well at points, Brentford at home, the Newcastle game definitely, but all I'm saying is at the minute with Eland, there is, data backs it up, there is a little bit of a slump with him at the minute, so maybe letting in a few too many goals, which should be savable. But yeah. Anyway, guys, I hope that's made you feel a little bit better about the Skubala appointment. Make sure you give a like on the video. There's nearly 600 of you in the building. Hopefully this has been a little bit of encouragement for you, and hopefully, as a group, we can look at Skubala. We can listen. The ownership are a different thing, as I've mentioned previously. The ownership, it's a joke. Let's hope they move on in the future. We need this. We need a new, fresh ideas. We need structure. We need no passion merchants on the board. We need a real good way of doing things, a real professional way of doing things. And thank you, Rads, for your time. But now I think we all know it's time to move on. And the 49ers are a very well established franchise who are doing proper things in the States. And I think them coming in is going to be beneficial for Leeds United. There's a reason why they're staying so quiet at the minute when it's chaos, because they're not a chaotic brand. That's simple. Right. Okay, everybody. Really appreciate your time. And as I say, make sure you're liking the video, and I will see you in a bit.